Good day, everyone. You're welcome. Today we'll be talking about blended learning. But before I go into details, I want to explain some terminologies we'll be using in this video. The acronym BL means blended learning. So when you see BL, we mean blended learning. So active learning method simply means the conventional method of learning which we agree into, that is face-to-face, a teacher in the class teaching the pupils. Okay, then the digital learning objects or digital learning system simply mean the online. Well, we use technological devices for learning. So a system that blends or that combines both is what we call blended system of learning. So in this case, we're talking about the intersect of the two systems, and that is why the definition of blended learning is a fundamental education design which utilizes both the active learning method and the digital learning objects to improve learning experience and outcome. Some other people call it hybrid learning. So we do physical, we also do online. Both are combined in an appropriate form. Before we go into what blended learning is, we will first talk about what blended learning is not. Okay, the first one is using a video to explain a lesson. Probably a video made by someone else is brought into a lesson to explain a particular concept. This is just integration of technology into a normal active learning. This is not blended. When is it blended? It is blended when the student can determine the pace, the time, and the paths for that lesson. So when things are done at their own pace, probably after explaining some things in the class, and we give them what to do in their home, probably the bulk or chunk of notes to be copied is given to them. Go on Edmodo to copy your notes, then take this task on Edmodo. The child knows when to do that. It gets home at his own pace. It can, spend enough time as he wants to do that. So, and in the period, on the process, he can as well make some search into several things to buttress his knowledge in the same topic. As a matter of fact, 35 minutes for a period may not be enough for explanation and the copying of notes. So, blended learning will help us to manage the time. We can use that period for explanation and we'll place their notes on Edmodo or any other program rather. So that helps us to manage our time. Now this leads me into the next subtopic, which is the components of blended learning. There are three components of blended learning. The first one is the face-to-face active learning. So this face-to-face active learning is the part of the blended learning which takes place in the school system, where the teacher or the educator facilitates the learning, which is a normal conventional part of the system. So the teacher passes the instruction, explains the concept, and does some other things within the school setting. The second component is the digital learning objects, and that is the gadget they have at home or they have in the school, which will also assist the learning process. So that will be very useful for chunk of information like copying of notes, which may not be done in the class to prevent waste of the precious time. The third one is a structured independent study time guided by the face-to-face teaching experience. So this could be done anywhere they choose to have it. So probably after the school, the computer lab or the school cafe could be open for some hours. So a child could decide to go to the cafe to complete his learning. Probably some tasks or notes is placed on Edmodo or any other program we decide to use. You could go there, complete the notes, take the tasks at their own time, and if they can't do this in the school, they can also use their gadget at home to complete the tasks. So, but this must be guided by the face-to-face instruction. What the teacher has said in the class will guide them into what to do, how to do. We're learning this, go make research on this, complete this and that on Edmodo. So how do we prepare for blended learning? As an educator or as a school as a whole, the first step we take is to set up a well-organized an easily navigable LMS, that is a learning management system. Like what we did during the lockdown, we explore Edmodo. Mr. Jude gave us the concept. We went through all, and we see that this program is well navigable. It's easier for students also to work with. There's a part for notes, a part for exercise, quizzes, and so on. So a well organized learning management like this should be adopted. That's one. The second one is we should be prepared to flip our classrooms. So what does it mean? Our classes could be swapped with what the children should do at home. So in most cases, the easier one is to have explanation done in the school period during the active learning period, so that when they want to go home, they can have time to do other things like copying of notes if they have a chunk of information to pass, copying of notes, take exercise, do assignments, and those one could be on their devices. In preparation for blended learning, the third thing we do is to prepare to teach the children or the students foundational technological skills, e.g., touch typing, how to copy hyperlinks, how to navigate the website, how to do a lot of things on the internet. And we don't have issues with this. They've been taught by the ICT teacher. I'm sure Mr. Jude has done a lot of this. The fourth step is to use interactive tools to make synchronous learning more effective. And this could be Padlet, Kahoot, Pear Deck, or Google Jamboard. Now, we can lay hand on one of these, and we've been using them. Now, it should be a program that will be very educative, at the same time very interactive, so that will make the children always want to come, play with it, at the same time they learn in the process. The last thing we do is to emphasize lesson design. So we have different design for lesson. Now, for example, I want to teach ratio. Now, ratio will involve various operations. A child will need to divide and multiply and reduce to the lowest term. So critical thinking will be needed. So as a teacher, we pick the design, then emphasize. I should send a timetable ahead of the class. So place on Edmodo as if that's the program we're going to use. So a child who studies the timetable, we shouldn't assume they all know timetable, they know this and that, but make something available if it is necessary. So from the division, a child knows that 4 times 6 is 24. So if there's a need to do division, he knows that 24 divided by 4 will give me 6. And that helps, or it aids their work on ratio at the same time for division into simplest form. So that is a design we must identify first, then look for which of the C's, the forces we learned earlier on, will aid such a lesson. Alright, I quickly run into the next subtopic, which is the challenges of blended learning in Nigeria as a case study. We may not have such in other countries or advanced countries, but the first problem we could face with blended learning in Nigeria is the epileptic power supply. Okay, like we can have it around here, but thank God in grade school, our power supply has become relatively stable. So another challenge is the high cost of technological devices. Maybe gadgets like the iPad, the phone, a laptop that could be used either in school or at home by the children. They are very expensive, as we see dollar changing things with the naira. Okay, now even as a teacher, getting phone is now beyond calling and receiving. Any phone that does not have a RAM of about 4 gig and above will not be useful for online teaching, Edmodo or whatever. It's going to be a very frustrating moment if the memory is lower than 3 or 4 gig. So, and those things are very expensive. If we're going to have a good or quality teaching, we should be ready to purchase a good device. So inadequate knowledge of the system is another problem. Sometimes one may not be very vast in the ICT or know some other programs that could be used for educative, means. So this as well is another challenge. And then lastly, reluctance of educators and even parents to adopt new system. Sometimes a parent could, be reluctant. After all, I have paid for fully physical. My child is in school. Why should I, spend money on buying data again? And so and so. So, in this case, we could have some challenges, and that is why we need proper awareness. That is what should go first as the way forward. That the parents, particularly, must be given orientation. Perhaps the circular should go home beforehand to tell them this is not physical and online. It is a new system. It has come to stay, and this is where we are. This is how we roll. This they need to know that there's a little change in their expenses. Or rather, the same subscriptions they have on their phone at home could also be shared by this child to go online to do few things and be on the same page with his classmate. So one more thing we need to do is a policy adoption. A firm policy should be adopted to guide the educators, the parents, and the learners, so that we don't violate some things or the principles that will guide the blended learning. And then lastly, we need to get the decision makers of the schools fully involved. So if they're not in support with what we do, then there is no way. So the decision makers should be informed, carried along, and be fully involved. So, just like what we saw in the icebreaker, now what are the 3 watermelon that will give us a sum of 30? We actually saw it at the first time and it was difficult, or we felt it's impossible. But on my side, I was seeing 9. On the other person staying opposite was seeing 6. The 9 I saw made me think it was impossible to get 30, but another person was saying 6 and he knew it was possible. So our perspective sometimes affects our results. What we think is not possible is just because of our perspective. It's just because the way we see things. If it could work over there in another part of the world, it can work here, it can work in Nigeria, it can work in our school. All we just need to do is to change our perspective. Let's see things from a different angle. If the way we see things is changed, then we can all do it. Together we achieve more. Thank you so much.